In Leslie Marmon Silko's ceremony, we follow Teo, a Native American veteran of the Second World War. After losing his best friend in the war and suffering from PTSD, Teo must come to terms with the trauma he suffered, as well as the centuries of oppression and exploitation that his people endured from white colonialism. By applying postcolonial critical theory to ceremony, the detrimental effects of white colonialism on Native Americans, their way of life, their culture, and their land can be shown. To break this down, we first have to understand Eurocentrism, which is, according to Lois Tyson, the belief that European culture is vastly superior to all others. In ceremony, we can see that white culture perceives itself as superior to Native American culture and actively tries to suppress it. This can be seen on page 68, where a Native American girl is drifting further and further away from her community and into alcoholism and other such activities. While the girl's sister, as well as their community, try to save her, they are ultimately unable to because of the cultural conditioning that the girl underwent in school, which told her that her Native American heritage was something to be ashamed of. In this passage, Leslie Marmon Silko uses diction in order to convey how Native Americans were perceived as inferior to those of European descent, specifically by equating deplorable with Indian and holy with white people. The word deplorable denotes inferiority and disgrace, so when it is used to describe the ways of the Indian people, it has the effect of portraying Native American culture in a derogatory way. In contrast, the word holy and missionary denote religiousness and heavenliness. When used to describe the way that white people are trying to help Native Americans, it connotes a sense of guidance and education towards a supposedly inferior people. This is an example of cultural dominance, where the indigenous, inferior culture, in this case Native American culture, is overshadowed by the colonizing, superior culture, which in this case is white American culture. By applying the critical theory of postcolonial criticism, we can examine the ways in which white American culture is trying to dominate Native American culture. For example, white American culture is viewed as superior to indigenous culture, and many white Americans attempt to help Native Americans by teaching them to abandon their backwards and primitive ways as they saw it. The use of diction, as well as the application of postcolonial criticism, reveals the way in which the dominant white American culture is trying to overpower or overshadow the Native American way of life.
In addition to the use of diction to ways that white culture perceives itself as superior, a dialogue between Texans that Teo overhears reinforces the suppression that is shown towards the Native Americans. The Texan cleared his throat. "Shit," he said. "Greasers and Indians. We can run them down. Anytime. But it's been a couple of years since anybody up here got a mountain lion." Okay. You were the one that wanted to mess with them, not me." "Shit. By the time we got back, the lion would be long gone." "Just leave him where he is. And let's go get the lion hounds before it gets dark." "Yeah, we taught him a lesson," the Texan said, his voice fading in and out with the wind. "These goddamn Indians got to learn whose property this is." In this passage, Silko uses the balance between the dominance of white American culture and the subjugation of Native American culture by utilizing the attitude of the Texan. The Texans, looking for mountain lions, find Teo and want to run him over. However, they decide to pursue the lions instead of trying to run Teo over. Before they leave, one of the Texans says that the Native Americans have to learn whose property this is. This particular piece of dialogue shows the dominance of white culture in the United States. The treatment of Native Americans by the dominant white culture shows the effects of colonialism and the nature of postcolonial theory. The domination of various Native American nations during the United States' push westward went to the forced use of white culture by Native Americans. The dominance of white culture gave many white Americans the sense of dominance over others. This is demonstrated by what the Texan says to his friend about Teo. The dominance that white Americans have is demonstrated by the use of this piece of dialogue. The hypocrisy that America has is visible through this interaction. The values of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are violated in many ways by those who've been exploited by the United States.
In addition to the dominance of white culture, Silko also uses a Native American perspective to describe the ways that the white government exploits the Native Americans by taking their land and destroying parts that are sacred to their culture. This is shown on page 246, where Teo visits land that formerly belonged to a Native American tribe, but was taken for the use of creating an atomic bomb. This passage uses figurative language to describe Teo's experience being at Trinity Site, with a description of one of the many instances in which sacred land is taken for the Native Americans, and in this case, for the purpose of creating a lethal war weapon. This shows that the government had taken land away from the Pochiti Pueblo for the use of creating a bomb. While the government views this land as merely a location for their bomb technology and their top-secret laboratories, the Native Americans see it as the Ponderosa, Pine and Tawny Sandrock of the Jemez Mountain Canyon, where the shrine of the Twin Mountain Lions had always been, demonstrating a clash in culture and values. Here, Teo's perspective is shown using figurative language to emphasize his emotions as a victim in the exploitation of the government. His original discovery of the location is described as its simplicity struck him deep inside his chest, and his later realization describes the victims of the destroyers having never seen the delicate colors of the rocks, which boiled up their slaughter. This brings in postcolonial criticism by showing the view of the victim rather than the perpetrator's view, of solely their purposes of taking land away from those they deem less deserving. It also shows the exploitation of the dominant white culture and the use of power by the white government to do so. The actions of the government to harm land taken away from the Native Americans show ways that the American ideal of equality are opposed by the government itself through the exploitation in terms of use and condition of the land.
There are a few, of many instances, where the hypocrisies of American ideals of freedom and equality are put into question, not only in the book ceremony, but also in many instances in real life, in which white Americans demonstrate their belief of superiority over Native Americans and use their power in government to push their belief, resulting in the exploitation of Native American land. Thank you.